At my school, like many other schools, we have a weekly English program. The whole point of them is to create sentence structures, introduce sentence structures to the students that they'll be able to use in many different formats, sort of like a math formula in which you could put various different verbs, adjectives, or nouns that you learn in your class.
I think they're doing a great job, but my expectations for fourth graders aren't extremely high. Like I said, if I can hold out a cookie and they say, I want a cookie, or if they see me walking around with crackers and say, teacher, I'm hungry, it's fine. They've communicated almost completely uninhibited at this point.
It's a very successful program, I think, at our school because it brings English into their lives more than we possibly can, because they review these phrases every day and they remember them, months later because they've reviewed them so many times. So I think it's a very good program for us.
Now this is obviously a very useful everyday activity because, well, one of the first things you'll do in a foreign country and one of the most common things you'll do is buy things.
One of the things that I really thought was important in designing this lesson, because the vocabulary is so practical and so easy to use every day, I wanted the lesson to be very interactive. I wanted the students to constantly be moving, to constantly be using language, either with each other or with me. And even if they were sort of sitting down at their desks, I wanted their hands to be moving or their mouths to be moving.
I think feeling is one of the most critical set of vocabulary you should learn for communicating in English, because really that's what language is all about, expressing yourself, and so much of yourself is centered around your mood. If all they walk away with are those four: happy, sad, angry, sick, they're going to be able to say a lot more to me than most Taiwanese.
This lesson was very useful in teaching everyday English because prepositions are frequently used to describe where objects are located, to give directions, and a variety of other functions.
I wanted them to feel like English was something they could use on a daily basis, and English had real life applicability.
With your teachers, you know that this is something they want to be in my class, and they want to learn the English and use it in their practical everyday use.
And I would say that experience was really remarkable, not just for them, but for me, because it was a turning point. I would say those teachers, some of them now are my good friends, people I will keep in touch with after I leave.
Reading storybooks has time and time again proven to be an effective way to learn language. It is effective because students are able to become familiar with new vocabulary words which have already been placed in the context of a story.
These big book classes, they gave the students a reason to pay attention to English and pay attention in English. I wasn't going to communicate anything to them in Chinese meaningful to the story. For that, they had to look at the pictures, look at my gestures, and listen to the sounds and put it all together themselves.
Most importantly for teaching phonics and teaching reading is that there are a great many word families that are contained within the story. These words with the word families are very easy to memorize as sight words, but then they're also very, very, very beneficial to look at by breaking them up into their word families and associated phonemes and trying to read them that way.
The best thing to do at the end of this story is to have the students apply what they've learned from listening and responding to the storybook by doing a drawing activity. And I think a drawing activity is particularly good for the older grades and for 6th grade because it forces them to think about what they've learned and apply it individually.
The great thing about project-based lessons is that at the end of the lesson you have a finished product that you can look at and that you can be proud of. After I teach this lesson, I usually try to take the Picasso portraits that all of my students have made and put them up on the wall so that they can really see objectively what they've done and what they've accomplished.
Coloring is an activity that I have incorporated into a lot of my evening classes. I find it's very, very popular with the children because it gives them a chance to express themselves in part, and also just to make something pretty while learning English at the same time.
My co-teacher put me in charge of preparing the student who would represent our school in the Easy Go English speech competition. And they all gave me a list of places they wanted to go to in Elon. And then they actually had to sit down and talk in English, because I can't speak Chinese, talk in English and tell me where they like to go, what they like to do, what they like to eat. And that in itself was remarkable, because they had to use English that they learned in the classroom or maybe outside, or sometimes just looked it up in the dictionary to convey their meanings.
One of the most common extracurricular activities for students studying English in Taiwan are speech competitions. This, I think, is still a useful exercise, because what it does is it allows students to be more comfortable with the words, English words flowing out of their mouth. They become better at pronunciation, and in fact, they do learn more words.
There's a good activity. Once the city was all planned out, they pasted the places and people on the map, and it was well planned. They even added roads. It was a very creative project.
The goal is also for collaboration. So much of our lessons day to day are individual and involve independent work. So it was great to give the students something that they could work together as a group for.
I think brainstorming is a useful strategy for getting your mind motivated. It's if we were to do it at the beginning of every single class, I think students would be kind of enveloped into English and their brains would be warmed up a little bit. So I think it's a strategy activity more than anything.
For Christmas, it was an especially busy time and an especially great week. The week before Christmas was our English week. We did not make it a religious holiday, but we talked about Christmas as a time where Americans take a day off or a few days off from work and get together with their families and count their blessings.
I think it's important to teach about American holidays, just as an example, of American culture. I wanted to draw in some sort of American culture when I taught about Halloween, and so I brought in the concept of rock and roll. What is more American than rock and roll, really, right now especially?
I can try to share a bit of who I am and what I'm about and what my traditions are, and in return the students do the same with me. I'm getting to know who they are as people and what traditions make up their culture, and it's a very wonderful exchange that we're engaging in.
I think that the most important thing for a teacher to do in any subject is to get the kids excited about the subject and get them excited about learning. And I tried so many ways to get them to do that, and sometimes it works and sometimes it backfires. My kids are very competitive, really, really competitive. Sometimes the competition between students can lead to conflict, and that's okay, that's normal. Sometimes it's really annoying, sometimes it causes disruption in the class, but I would rather have the kids excited and maybe get in some fights or get angry about learning than have them bored and not care.
One of those games is Pictionary, which is a very popular game among my students because it involves the aspects of competition, which they love.
They do realize that they're learning something or practicing something that they usually find boring. But having an actual toy actually, it makes them interested. It makes them want to do something. They have the confidence enough to actually play a game. It's extra motivation because they're a little bit competitive. Every student's a little bit competitive inside. And so they find the motivation to say, okay, even though I might get it wrong, I'll still try to answer this question. But if you get a game, the class management style changes. It's more to enforce the rules of the game than to enforce a diligent attitude, because the diligence and the motivation is there all of a sudden with the game. And that's the positive part of games.
Personally think that this activity is good because it not only encourages the students on their own to answer and to review the material, but we're also engaging the group and for the most part, we were able to keep everyone focused.
I found that using games in the classroom is a really effective means of getting children excited about English. And ultimately, I think that it's really important for us to get the children motivated to learn and inspire them, want to speak English. So we're always trying to come up with new games and new techniques for doing this. Well, you can, as evidenced by the children's faces, you can tell that they're very excited and that this game was a successful reviewing tool.